I'm doing my bread and butter pickle recipe today. I really like this one. I've been doing it for years. It's good to have on hamburgers, on sandwiches. I also chop it up and I'll put it in tuna fish or pasta salads. I mean, so good to add to so many different things. The flavor in it is just, I really like it because it's got that bread and butter sweet pickle kind of taste, but it's not overwhelming, but it also has the dill seed, so it has just a little bit of the dill flavor. My 9-year-old son had actually never even tried a regular dill pickle until, probably about 2 or 3 years ago. The little dill pickle slices, he got one put on a sandwich when we were out, and he thought they were disgusting. He pulled them out. He still refuses to eat them because he is so accustomed to eating our bread and butter pickles instead and loves them so much. I'll begin making the syrup by adding 5 cups of sugar to a pot, and then 5 cups of white vinegar, 2 teaspoons of dill seed, 2 teaspoons of mustard seed, and half of a cup of Ball's bread and butter pickle mix. I've tried other mixes, but I far prefer the Ball one. In recent years, I've had a little bit more trouble finding it, so when I do find it, I buy them in bulk so that I'll have them for long periods of time. Then I'll place this on the stove and bring it to a boil. While that's coming to a boil, I'll chop up my cucumbers. I want to make them about 1/4 of an inch thick. I'll be using my food processor today, but you could also use a mandolin or just cut them by hand. I've done that as well. Sometimes I make them crinkle cut, it just depends, but it doesn't change the flavor of it. I'm really not picky about the kind of cucumbers that I choose to use. I'll do everything from my dragon egg cucumbers to my longer Japanese cucumbers to my little pickling cucumbers. It just kind of depends on what's in season at the moment. And sometimes I'll even get some funky ones that get stuck in between my fencing. And so they're not perfect, but it doesn't matter because they'll taste good no matter what. I need to slice up 7 pounds worth of cucumbers, so it takes a little while. That's where I really like the food processor. The only downside is it doesn't make it quite as thick as when I cut it by hand. So I finished doing all of my cucumbers, and some of them I ended up having to go through and do by hand just because they were too fat to fit through the chute of my food processor. But I actually really like the size of those. If you compare them, they're about twice as thick as some of these, and it just kind of depends because of the amount of pressure that you put in when you do it on the food processor. So if you just want to do it by hand, that works lovely as well. Actually a little bit better. So now I'll fill up my quart-sized jars with my sliced cucumbers. If I have any cucumbers that are not sliced well, that are, too thin, or where it's just a portion of it, I won't use those. We'll just eat them. I try to stack them pretty tightly in my jars because I don't want there to be too much airspace. I need to leave enough room so that I can have a 1/2 of an inch of headspace at the top. Headspace is space from the top of the food to the top of the jar. This is probably the most time-consuming part of putting this together, is loading up the cucumbers into the jar. Now that my syrup's come to a boil, I'll fill up my quart-sized jars to that 1/2 of an inch of headspace. Now, every time I make this, it fills up a slightly different number of jars. It depends on how much space is around the cucumbers, how much syrup it's going to use. I usually just start out with my 7 pounds of cucumbers, fill as many jars as I can, then I do the syrup, and I just go from there. Fair warning, the smell of the vinegar when it's boiling and really hot like this is a little bit much. I try to be careful as I fill my jars because I want to make sure that I get a little bit of that spice in each of them. Because it floats to the surface, it can be easy to grab more of it in the beginning than at the end. Because I have so much syrup left today, I'm actually going to run back out to my garden and see if I can find enough cucumbers to fill up another jar. Now I'll use a wooden chopstick to debubble my jars. This is just so that if there's any little bubbles that are trapped in there, that they can be released. And then I'll use a clean damp cloth to wipe off the rim of my jars so that if any syrup got on the edge, that it won't interfere with the seal. Now I'll place my lids and rings on until they're fingertip tight. You'll notice that mine has a blue seal on it. I actually am using the Superb lids today. They're my new favorite. I use them all the time now because they do such a good job of sealing. They seal up to 36 months as opposed to the 18 months of the lids that I used to use. Also, they have a corrosion-resistant coating on them, which makes it so that they don't rust as easily. I have a discount code for 20% off, plus the link in my description below. Now, I'll place these in my boiling water bath, submerged by 1 to 2 inches of water, and I'll process them for 15 minutes if I'm at sea level. I'm at 1,200 feet, so I'll go for 20, but I won't start my timer until after it starts to boil. Now that my timer's gone off, I'll remove the lid, turn off the heat, and let it cool for 5 minutes. I place my jars on a heat-resistant surface about 1 to 2 inches apart so that they can cool down quickly. I'll leave them there for 24 hours so that they can get a good seal. I know that they have a good seal if the center of the lid has depressed down. If it has, then I'll remove the ring, wash off the outside with hot soapy water, and store them in a cool, dry, dark location like my pantry and use them in the next 1 to 3 years. If any of them didn't seal, then I would place it in the refrigerator, allow it to rest anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks, and then go ahead and eat them at that point. Pickles, because of the fact that they have that brine that they're in, they need a couple of weeks to absorb it. So I won't want to open any of these for 4 to 6 weeks so that they can get the best flavor. If I had one that was in the refrigerator, it would be fine because there's so much vinegar in there, it would stay good for a long period of time.